All right, hello class. Today we are going to read a book called Danger Earthquakes by Seymour Simon. That's what the title looks like. There are going to be two vocabulary words I want you to be on the lookout for. The first one is damage. Damage means to collapse or wreck. Here's a picture of a computer. There's a crack in the screen and it's smoking. That computer has lots of damage. The next word that I want you to look at is wreck. Wreck means to destroy, ruin, or break. Here's a picture of a car, and it looks like it drove into a pole. There's glass on the bottom, liquid on the floor, and the car looks smashed up. The car was in a wreck. Wreck. Perfect. Let's look at our reading for today. Danger, earthquakes. The ground beneath your feet may seem solid, but earthquakes make the ground shake and roll. Look at the damage to this house. Most earthquakes last a minute or less, yet they cause more damage than any natural disaster. Earthquakes can knock down buildings and wreck, destroy, ruin, or break highways. They can destroy whole cities and towns. Take a look at that building. Can you see all the cracks in the walls? Even here at the bottom. Each year, there are about 1 million earthquakes around the world, but only about 100 of these cause much damage. Fewer than 20 results in deaths. The worst earthquakes can kill thousands of people. In Italy, 85,000 people died when a dangerous quake hit in 1908. So this is a picture of Italy. The city fell. Scientists use the Richter scale to measure an earthquake's power. You may not even notice a magnitude 2 quake. There's damage on the highway. So on the roads, the earthquake made the road crack in half. You would feel the ground shake in a magnitude 3 quake. A magnitude 7 or higher can destroy a city. The largest recorded earthquake was a 9.5 in Chile in 1960. The Mercalli scale tells us how much damage an earthquake caused. You would not feel a level 1 quake. Windows break at level 5. Level 12 is the worst. So it goes from level 1 to level 12. Everything is totally destroyed. The quake that shook San Francisco in October 1989 measured 7.1 on the Richter scale. On the Mercalli scale, it measured from 6 to 11 in different parts of the city. It looks like the roof caved in. Most of the world's earthquakes happen in a zone called the Pacific Ring of Fire. So the places with the red dots, places most major earthquakes have hit in the last 30 years. And then the highlighted blue is the Pacific Ring of Fire. So these red dots are where earthquakes, really big earthquakes, have hit. It even happens in the ocean. Here is the Pacific Ring of Fire. So most of the earthquakes happen from here all the way along here. So here's North America. This is where we live. And then here on the coast, on the west coast, this is the Pacific Ring of Fire. And here is where most major earthquakes have hit in the last 30 years. We live in Oregon, so we're around this area here. Most earthquakes begin in the Earth's crust. The Earth's crust is the layer of rocks that cover the Earth. It is 5 to 30 miles deep. Cracks in the rocks run through the crust. These are called fault zones. The rocks on one side of the crack push against the rocks on the other side. The rocks may stay in place for years, but then they suddenly slide past each other. What makes rocks move? The answer lies below the crust in the mantle. The mantle is 2,000-mile thick layer of melted rock. Over millions of years, movements in the mantle have cracked the crust into huge floating pieces called plates. These plates grind past each other at about 2 inches per year. That's about as fast as your fingernails grow. The layer of rock in this photo folded because of movements in the mantle. Here's another picture of a damaged home. The San Andreas Fault lies between the North American and the Pacific plates. It runs for 700 miles through Southern California, just north of San Francisco. So they're talking about in California. There's lots of earthquakes in California. Each year, California has about 35,000 earthquakes. That's a lot. Most are too small to be felt. Less than 100 measure 4 or more on the Richter scale. Alaska has more earthquakes than any other state. Alaska has a magnitude 7 quake almost every year. Quakes also occur in central United States. In 1811, an 8+ quake shook the Mississippi Valley. It caused church bells to ring in Boston, nearly 1,000 miles away. So when there was an earthquake, the ground shook so hard that it made big church bells ring by itself. The most violent earthquake ever recorded in the United States took place in Anchorage, Alaska in March 1964. That was a long time ago, before I was born. The quake measured 8.4 on the Richter scale and 10 on the Mercalli scale. Cracks in the earth up to 30 feet wide opened like giant jaws. Nearby ports were completely destroyed by huge sea waves. More than 100 people died. So here's a picture of the damage that was done in Anchorage, Alaska. In September 1985, an 8.1 earthquake struck Mexico City. The quake was more powerful than 1,000 atomic bombs. Nearly 10,000 people were killed. Hundreds of buildings were destroyed. Since then, stronger buildings have been erected. These new buildings are much safer. So lots of us learned from the past to build stronger buildings to withstand earthquakes. Some buildings remain standing during a strong earthquake, while others nearby collapse. Building on steep hillsides or on loose soil is dangerous. It's safer to build a house on flat land and solid rock. The safest buildings can bend back and forth without breaking. You can see that earthquakes are really dangerous. Here's another map. Scientists use machines that can measure and record earthquake activity. They can also tell us where earthquakes are likely to strike. Here's our legend. It says, earthquake zones in the United States. Yellow is none. Orange is minor, which is really small earthquakes. Moderate, it means medium. It's kind of like a red-orange color. And red is major. So here's Alaska and Hawaii. Here's the west coast of the United States. This is Oregon. So we're in the very small or no earthquakes. California looks like it has a lot of earthquakes. Texas, part of Texas doesn't have any earthquakes. Even Florida. But they cannot yet tell us exactly when, where, or how big the earthquake will be. Here's what to do if you are in an earthquake. If you are indoors, stay there. Take cover under a sturdy table, desk, or bed. Stay away from windows, mirrors, and high cabinets. If you are outdoors, move away from power lines and tall buildings. No one can prevent earthquakes. That's why it's called a natural disaster. But in the future, we'll be able to reduce the damage they cause. The end.